Hello everyone. In this video, I thought I'd do a couple of things. One is to reflect on your assignments from last week where you created your lesson plans using generative AI. And I also thought I'd talk through a framework that I've been considering and looking at some of your reflections. I think this is a good time to introduce that. Okay, so let's jump right into it. For the assignment observations, right, there were some interesting comments and I'm picking up on the most repeated ones. So one thing many of you agreed on is that image creation is bad. Now, when we talk of image creation, as we discussed in the previous week, a few things you need to keep in mind. One is image creation by itself is a very difficult process. Just computing wise, creating an image is complex. So that is something you need to think about. The other thing is all these generative AI models, they are trained on data, right? And we don't have sufficient image data for them to have been trained on. So that's another limitation. And this gets worse when you're talking about medical images, because you're talking about a very niche field and you're talking about very specific images, right? And you don't have these available in the public domain. And so they haven't really been trained on that. And so that's another reason why image creation is bad. The other aspect of it is the fact that using Gemini and ChatGPT to create images is far from optimal, right? Because these are large language models. Language is their primary focus, textual data. But of course, they're adding to the algorithm and making it do things with images, and they have gotten so much better at it. However, that isn't their area of expertise. So to expect them to create something good is trying to use a hammer when you need to use a screwdriver kind of thing, right? So you need to think about using the appropriate tool for the appropriate job. And I think that's something that you're all coming to understand as you work with these tools, right? Some of you had made very astute observations about is it worth the effort of doing more tweaks and more changes to get to the result I want, or should I just do it myself? Or should I use some other tool like Canva? So you have to start thinking about what is the best tool for what I am going to do, and then use that. Now, if you use the right tool, your concerns over hallucinations and all will reduce because the right tool has been created for that purpose, which means things like hallucinations come down. Things for you to think about. Another one that was repeated in a few of your reflections was this idea of moral injury, professional identity being challenged, and your role as being more of a manager than a creator. So if Gen AI can create these lesson plans so effortlessly and doing a really good job of getting what is in my head or even pushing me further and creating it so quickly and nicely, what is my role in this, right? Yes, I'm prompting things along, but does that mean I'm just a manager and not a creator, right? And it's definitely a challenge to everyone's professional identity. I might have mentioned this in previous videos, but I definitely have wrestled with that as well. And that's something we all have to think through. I would say with regard to this concern over being either a manager or a creator, it's a valid concern, right? Because you're getting all of this content and ideas from Gen AI, and then we're just making the final selections. I would say it's not as simple as that. And as I go through the other slides, I think it'll kind of clarify what I'm trying to say. But I think the way you prompt and how well you have a conversation with the AI tool is creative in its nature itself. And we might need to rethink what we mean by creation, right? Does it mean me writing down everything in an isolated bubble? Is that creation? Or is it creation when I work with something else and together we come up with something new? So start thinking about those lines. Now, when you feel you're not a creator anymore, think about how you usually do things, right? You probably look at Google, you probably look at some other resources. So are you a creator then if you're looking at those resources as well, right? So different ideas for you to ponder over. And this was another one that came up, which is accuracy versus creativity. So some of you in your prompting, you tried to give as many parameters as possible because you wanted to limit the number of hallucinations that you get from the model, right? You wanted to make it more accurate right off from the beginning. Now, this is a trade-off, and it's a big trade-off. So if you want accuracy and you're going to give so many guardrails and boundaries around your parameters, you're definitely sacrificing creativity. And my contention always is the strength of these tools is in their creative nature. And when we start curtailing that, we're not doing justice to what the tool is meant to be or what it can do, right? So what I would say at this point is you need to think about what it is you want to do, right? If your focus is on just writing questions, multiple choice questions of this kind for this audience, you have a very specific set of guidelines you want to follow, then fine, go ahead, because accuracy is your only concern at that point. But again, remember, large language models were not meant to be accurate in these circumstances or in these niche fields. They weren't meant to be accurate in pretty much anything, right? They just take data and they give you probability, what will come next, right? So expecting 100% accuracy from them, I think is naive on our part. Now, if on the other hand, you're just looking for options and trying to think of new ways to do things and you want more creativity, you definitely want to give free rein to the tool itself. And I think I've mentioned this in the previous slides. I would do a balance of those two. Especially in the assignments you're doing for this course, you really want to focus on the creativity aspect of it. Let the tool run, see how far you can push it and what the new things are coming from it. Once you've got that big picture of everything that you've thought through, then you narrow it down to the mega prompt, which then becomes a very structured, templated thing, which narrows down the focus as well. But definitely start broad. Look at what this tool can do for you. Okay, so that's from the assignment itself. This is going to be a long video, people. Okay, when you're doing prompting, right, a few things I wanted to mention here. And these are my takes on where we should be going next with using generative AI. Okay, I'm not talking about where we are right now. I'm thinking about these tools being a part of our lives and how best we can use them moving forward. And it was great to see some of you picking up on these ideas in your reflections as well. So one of my big issues is we should not be treating these tools as a tool or a computer program. Yes, I get that that's what they are. They are algorithms, right? But it's not a simple calculator kind of an interaction. It's not I put in 2 + 2, it gives me a 4. That's not the kind of interaction we're talking about. That's a very extractive interaction, right? The only reason I'm using you is as a tool. I give you these instructions, follow it, give me my perfect response. So the focus is always on how do I get that perfect response and what are the big instructions that I need to give it, right? So you're not having a dialogue with the tool. It's a very extractive relationship. My contention is the relationship has to be dialogic. And what I noticed in your discussions and your reflections is, for some of you who have been using an extractive relationship or an extractive form of engaging with the tool itself, when you read your peers' interactions and saw how theirs was a little different and more conversational, your observations were then, I need to maybe change this and try something different, right? So you can see that there is a difference in the way we interact. I will highly encourage you to start thinking of this as a dialogue that you're having, okay? And the more you have a dialogue, the more it becomes a co-creator. I saw this term coming out in quite a few of your reflections, and yes, that really is where I want us to be going. Think of this as a co-creator. The caveat here is, it's a co-creator, yes, but you are still in control of the final decisions. When we're talking of two human beings working together, when we say, I have a peer, we are writing a paper together, and my peer and I are co-creating this paper, that's a different relationship, right? My peer can take responsibility for their for the decisions they make and whatever the end result is. Your AI tool can't. Right? So while I use the term co-creator, it is with the caveat that you are still in control. You are the person making the final decision. So it still enforces human sovereignty, and the AI still is a tool. Okay. Now this might change a few years down the line. It might be the next matrix that we're walking into. I don't know. But for now, this is where I see us. And I think what we're looking at is we need to be having a collaborative, meaning-making relationship with these tools, right? So when you're using these tools, it's not just that it gives you a response and you're done. It solved a problem for you. You need to think of it as, what else am I learning out of this, right? And I know one of you had talked about how you had used this tool to the objectives and assignments. You weren't familiar with creating objectives. But now after this, you have an idea of objectives, don't you? I want you all to kind of take a pause over here and think about, from your interactions with these tools, what have you learned that you didn't know before? Because I can tell you, I have learned a whole lot of things that I did not know before just from my interaction with these tools. So again, things to put out there and think about. A couple of things that I don't really like is long prompts. Yes, I know I keep saying this, sorry, my soapbox, but I don't like long prompts, right? You have people who will write page-long prompts. I don't do that. One of the reasons is the tools go crazy because you have so many instructions over there for them to follow all of that and keep track of everything in the context that you're giving it. They make mistakes, right? So instead of that, and again, that goes more towards an extractive relationship, which I want to move away from. And so I really see more of a building blocks kind of thing, right? I give you this little bit, then let's build on that, and then let's build on that. No, I'm going to push back on this, right? So it's a back and forth thing, but building on that. So I really don't like long prompts at all. And when you have a conversation with these tools, just a reminder, these tools do have memory limits within the conversation itself. How it'll manifest is, you might have started the conversation by telling it to assume a role, right? And it's been doing that, but then it starts drifting after you've been working with it for some time, because it forgets that role. So at some points, you need to repeat what you want it to do. And so keep that memory issue in mind. Different tools work differently. Gemini is really not my favorite. It's getting better, yes, but I've found more of these memory lapses with Gemini, okay? Again, personal preferences, so the principle behind it being, keep in mind that they do forget. Okay, so this is the framework that I am working on. It will be coming out in medical education, I think in the next month or so, in their next issue. But let me just go through the way I'm envisioning what we need to do when we're dealing with generative AI tools. what I'm proposing is the epistemic entanglement framework. I feel that when we're talking to these tools, again, what we need is a collaboration with them, but it's a collaboration where you're not just taking whatever it says, but you're really pushing back, and there's a lot of friction in your interaction, and it's an entangled interaction. So your human AI interaction is very similar to a human interaction, and that entanglement is what I'm trying to tease apart. So I see this as three separate entanglements, or three separate configurations, right? So the first configuration is epistemic augmentation. So in this particular role, your Gen AI tool is just going to augment what you're doing. So it's the most basic level of interaction with the tool as I see it. So it's something like a learner prompting ChatGPT or Gemini saying, write a reflection on a difficult patient interaction. Now the tool will give you a response for that. You just copy paste it. That's epistemic augmentation. We're talking at the base level. You can now push your interaction a little further to the next configuration, and this I call epistemic integration, right? So here your interaction with the tool is a little bit more. Your prompts are iterative. You're rewording some of the sentences, and it's more of a conversation of, this is what I want to say, can you help me, right? And you're working through what the AI suggests for you. Your reflection is shaped by a bit of those conversations. But that I still think is just level 2. Where I want us to be is at level 3, which is epistemic co-agency. So in this instance, the tool and you are working together, right? So the student might start a draft, and then you ask the tool, this is what I'm working on. What are my weaknesses? How can I get better at it? And this is not what I want to focus on. So it's more conversations. And this is what I have seen you all moving towards in your prompts. And I've been kind of pushing you all towards this. So I thought this was a really good place to introduce this for you. So yes, so epistemic co-agency. Now, when we think of epistemic co-agency itself, right, what I see this as is the we, right? The we over here for me is me and the Gen AI tool. We think together, right? So I think with the AI tool, we think together, we learn together, and we act together, right? So let me parse that out. So we think with the AI. It's the AI helps, provokes me, gets me to think differently, redirects my thinking, tells me my ideas are terrible. I have a GPT that tells me how stupid my ideas are, but it pushes me, right? It pushes me to try something new. So we're thinking together, and we learn together as well, meaning I'm learning new concepts from Gen AI, and the AI looking at my interactions and my responses to it is learning my patterns as well. There's a mutual learning happening over here that we need to recognize. And then the actions itself, when we're talking of ecosystems where your AI is an element within the ecosystem, the AI can make some decisions, you're making some decisions, together the final result comes out. And this is very obvious when you think of a clinical setting, right? You might have AI tools that are doing some clinical decision making, right? And so it can make those decisions together with you, and then you might be doing some piece of it, and it might be doing certain actions as well. And so it's this we of thinking, learning, and acting together, which is where I see us going. Now, why do I think epistemic co-agency is important? The big issues that we have with using generative AI is we're losing critical thinking skills, and these tools hallucinate. How do we teach our learners about these issues? Now, what about teaching our learners how to critically interact with these tools, right? Don't see it as something that's going to give you an answer, but see it as an interaction where you're pushing back and it's pushing you back as well, right? And together you're having this dialogic interaction, which then leads you to a better result. And when you're pushing each other, you're questioning the decisions that it comes up with. So if it gives you a suggestion of, have you consider X, Y, or Z, I now push back and say, why are you suggesting that? How did you come to that conclusion? When you start having it work through its thought process, it's easy to identify hallucinations, right? And that's because of the critical thinking you're doing at that point. And by pushing it, you are developing your own critical thinking skills as well. So if we could teach our learners a better way of interacting with these tools, I think that's the skill set that they need at this point. And so, Epistemic Co-Agency. Just a table to kind of bring it all together. If we're talking of augmentation, the learner is, primarily receptive, right? So you're going to accept pretty much whatever the tool gives you. And the AI is perceived as an answer engine, right? Now, when you go into epistemic integration, you're looking at a more strategic relationship, so you could refine what it gives you. You're comparing a little bit more. So it's an interactive tool or a collaborator. But when we come to epistemic co-agency, right, you're talking of a reflexive user of that interaction. You're critical, you're creative. You interrogate, you reframe, you dialogue with the tool itself. Right? So it's, why are you doing this? Why haven't we considered this? Maybe we need to walk down this path. I don't like this, right? So we're reframing, we're restructuring and learning new things over there. And the AI becomes a provocateur. It provokes you, it gets you thinking, it's moving you in different directions, right? But this kind of an interaction needs maturity. It needs maturity in thought. And so I don't propose that this is a stage by stage developmental plan, right? It could be, you could see it as that, but I think each of them has their own role at different stages. I think we need to accept that. But what I would push against is, while each of them has a role, the problem is we should not see augmentation and integration as being sufficient. So we shouldn't get complacent in those two postures and stay there. We need to be continuously pushing towards co-agency, right? And that's what I am hoping will happen with what we're doing with Gen AI tools. I'd love to hear your feedback and thoughts on this. So if you have any thoughts, let me know. For me, all of this is really exciting stuff. But again, looking ahead to what Gen AI is going to be, right? And again, I found all of these, this whole framework and everything came up when I started thinking of really the clinical environment, right? And you have AI all around you, and you are now one person interacting with so many AI tools. And who are you as a clinician then? What is your role in that? Well, if we want to define our role in that, we have to decide where we belong, right? And I think if we look at ourselves as co-agents, then that gives us more agency. We are still empowered and we're minimizing the flaws of the AI tools themselves.